here. Just want to let everyone know that this session will be recorded and also transcript that we do share onto our webpage. So for those who has that may have posted that, let us know immediately, and we can work on that. So with that being said, welcome to our November session, our session number 7 for the dedicated locator member Q&A. As we head towards the end of the year, we are seeing a few more projects take advantage of the off-peak season to position and set their project into DL coming into the next year, right? So we've seen several feedbacks from when we sent out the initial invite for this session that we did have a feedback link in there. So we received several feedback from Infrastructure Ontario that their requirements and process are unclear during the setup period. So in this session, we're going to kind of concentrate and dive in a little bit of that, just kind of brief overview. As a member, what is your requirement and what is your position and during the submission process of a dedicated locator? And also we'll be sharing several resources where you can find useful resources for you as a member to help you guide in within the dedicated locator process. And then towards the end, we do have a special guest speaker from Rogers Communication, Tabitha Wa, who will be sharing with us their experience through the dedicated locator model. And then from there, we can open up the floor at this point. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one here. So first thing first, I just wanted to give, as a member here, a quick overview of workflow, basically to what you're responsible for during the process. And from the initial submission process that we receive from our end as Ontario One call of a dedicated locator project. And then from that point, and when we do pluck out the affected members within the project scope, we do send out the first thing you would see here is the member notification form that we do send out to all affected members within the project area. Once you receive that, and I'll provide you on the next slide, I'll provide you a quick sample of how that would look like. So it is clear that you see what that acknowledgement email would look like. Basically, once you receive that notice, that is the initial start of the process. So that is when the 90-day and also the 10-day format as per the legislation starts with a member requirement, right? So the first thing you would do as a member is review the email and the attachment provided in there. Within the attachment, there are the DL notice and the member information and other information that would describe the project and the dedicated locator selection of that point. Once you have reviewed that, best thing to look at is that whether or not you do have questions towards the project owner or DLSP on hand, you can respond back directly to the project owner to get more details, or the best thing to do is reply to all, and that way Ontario One Call receives the information as well too, as the dedicated locator service provider or the project owner receives the information if you require more details of the mapping or other such prior to providing approval. That could be set in between the timeline there. Now, initially, you'll be probably, you'll most likely be reached out by the dedicated locator service provider within a day or two from the time that we send out that acknowledgement email. That is their just initial reach out to say that they are the they are the preferred dedicated locator service provider that is put upon for this project. So they'll be just reaching out to you to get your requirements and such. Now, within that, like I said, you can reply all. Once you do agree on the dedicated locator service provider with the project owner, you can just respond to all and just in simple writing, just say you do agree with the dedicated locator service provider. And then from that point in, you can work with the project owner and DLSP to provide mapping and records and such. This is the requirement mainly, is where this timeline takes a bit of a lengthy process, but obviously, we are working within the 90 days, and we also working as more projects comes in, that 10 days more attainable for you to share that mappings or records or such training. Now, above here is just a recommendation. It is not part of a requirement of the legislation, but it is a best practice recommendation that you come into an agreement with the dedicated locator service provider. So that is such what we've seen is MSA come around, or any other servicing contract that you want to implement into there. Like I said, from previous sessions that we have, that agreement is very unique to a dedicated locator model, whereas you can, stipulate any requirements you have for your infrastructures and such, escalation process, anything that you want to work with directly the DLSP in terms of locating your infrastructure safely and what is required by them on their side. Once that's all completed and provided to, there is a member authorization form that the dedicated local service provider is provided with by Ontario One Call that they forward over to each member to get the final approval sign off. So this is sign off. This is a sign off where the dedicated local service provider and the member have complete all requirements for them to locate your infrastructure, and it's just a sign off that would indicate to Ontario One Call and be submitted back to Ontario One Call, where we can apply your suppression of your station code for that specific DL ID at that point. So this is just an overall high level overview of your process. We can break it down a little bit more. As some of the members that we've seen in this call, we've taken our time to have those one-on-one calls with you guys. But like I said, this is, if you require any more information or anything and such like that, just reach over to our team. We can provide you a more in-depth onboarding presentation or just discussion towards to what your requirements are. So just going back to the previous slide here, this is just a sample email of what it looks like for our member acknowledgement email. So on the top left-hand side here in the yellow circle, it would indicate the subject line. So when you receive an email, it does have a subject line of the DL number. So that is the project number that's registered under Ontario One Call. So it would have a DL, then followed by the unique ID number of that project. And it will provide you a dedicated locator notice, and it will indicate the project owner name and the DLSP selected, and then whichever servicing zone that they'll be working into. Just like on the previous slide, there are two main attachments that would come with that email. One attachment is the initial submission form of the project owner. That submission form would carry on the project information, the project owner, and all the other and the dedicated locator service for provider owner contact information and such. So it just provides you all the overall details that's required for you to assess the dedicated locator project on hand and coming through. The second one there is the dedicated locator regional project member information. So you can see that a bit on the right side here. I provide a quick snippet. This is just a good review or best practice that you can review and just any frequently asked questions in regards. So you can have a quick read out of that and just kind of gives you a brief description of the process and gives you a better guidance to that. Moving on to the next one here, just want to give you guys a brief overview of the access that we have. Oh, sorry, move forward a little bit faster there. So on this video here, it just gives you a brief description of where to find these resources onto our webpage. So on the Ontario One Call, we do have the subsection there for dedicated locator. And when you click on that, it does have multiple landing page for project owner, excavator, DLSP, and such. Now, if you scroll down a little bit here, as you can see in the video here, there is a dedicated locator frequently asked questions. So you can click on that as well to get frequently asked questions that we've come across with. But for members here, there is a member specific area there you can click on. This is the section for members, and this is where you can click on the best practices forms that we do have, and it just gives you a brief overview of what you need to know as a member. And also it gives you a checklist as well too to what to be prepared for as a member when accepting a dedicated locator project. And we'll go through that to the next one here. So basically the best practice, it gives you the information, what you need to know, what kind of resources that you can fall into. And then the final part there is on our next slide here is the best practice recommendation here for infrastructure owner that is indicated onto that form. So once again, this is going back to, ensure your organization has the right DL contact up to date. There are cases that we are sending out these notices, but they're not going to the right contact. And we would have to update that on our side here. So if that is your case to your side, please notify our DL team immediately so we can update who will be the right person within your organization that we can list as the dedicated locator model contact. So this is the main point of contact for your side of things, where we reach out for project notices, or the DLSP or project owner can reach out for in regards of anything in regards of dedicated locator. Second of all, is that obviously we review the ONUS Act and what your requirement is as a member. Agree in writing with a project owner dedicated locator within the 10 business days receiving and such. And it just kind of gives you breakdown to what you need and require. So ensuring you have the mapping up to date, know what your requirements are for your locating of your infrastructure. This is where it comes back to the recommendation of an agreement set in place with a dedicated locate service provider. So you would indicate that to what kind of requirements you require to locate your infrastructure. And then working with the DLSP to develop an escalation process, keeping an open line communication. So this is the main positive thing about dedicated locator is that previously under a public stream, there's really no sense of there's no really communication between a project owner, a locate service provider, and a member. We are opening that up with this model itself, where there's open transparency all across stakeholders. So this helps overall the industry to have better safe dig practices overall. So with that as well, in the last point here, we have include the entire one call to all the transcript of the email, so that way we are able to see the progressions, any escalation that's required, any issues and whatnot, we're able to see and step onto that. So these are just a quick of a checklist at the end. It's like the first thing is you're going to look at, do you agree on the DLSP with the project owner? Second of all, so as a member, are you able to provide mapping to the DLSP? And you can check that off. And from that point, is the DLSP ready to locate on your behalf? So this is just a quick 3 checkpoint that you can do to yourself during this whole entire process. The last one here I just wanted to kind of bring over is what the member authorization form looks like. This is, like I said, this is shared upon the dedicated locate service provider once they reach out to you and once you guys fill in the agreement and such. So the first thing first you were going to see here is the information above here is obviously the dedicated locate project information. So it would have the submission date, when the DL request was submitted, project owner name, type of work, DL zone, and the selected DLSP in the station code. So all that information is pre-filled in this area here of the form. What you're looking at is the second part of the form here is where you would fill in your member name and the station code affected within that project area. So these are the notification that are indicated to where the project areas are. So there'll be specific station code, whether or not it's just one station code or multiple station code that are affected within the work area there. The third one we see here is just the final sign off. So the member signing off and the DLSP signing off that they fulfilled all the requirements within subsection 7.7, which is agreeing to DLSP and providing the mapping and training and such that's required upon the dedicated located service provider to locate your infrastructure. And this one is to be submitted back to the dedicated locate model. Email address that we have here. So that's to be returned by the DLSP to us, or you can return this directly to us as a member to us. Now, on our previous session here, we did indicate that on 2024, we are in review of revamping or kind of refining our processes. So some of these processes that I've gone through may have some changes to it as of 2024. This is just a brief overview that I just wanted to provide to you of the current stance of where we're at. And obviously we still see multiple projects that's utilizing this time, this off-peak season time to submit their project in time or prepare for 2024. So you may be receiving some of these right now and just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. But as of 2024, we can reconvene again and provide you a better update to where our direction would be and what what the process are by then, and we'll provide you a better update. So at this point of the presentation, I just wanted to give you guys a brief overview updates again for dedicated locator, just like our monthly updates. Our project updates pretty much currently happening remains the same. What we're looking at here are the imminent, which is City of Toronto and Empire communities that have submitted their notices for dedicated locator. I want to highlight Empire communities in there just because these are land developers, where as we're seeing more and more interest in utilizing dedicated locator in this sector and this industry in this sector, as we are told by municipalities as well too, that there's several interests in mandating land development to go under DL for the safety aspect and purposes of locating unassumed utilities before they are assumed by the municipal. So this is a really great segue for land developers utilizing the benefits of dedicated locator to start off with, obviously progressing with their site, getting locates on time, on a timely manner, And from the municipal side of things, they're able to rely that safe dig practice are accounted for and better visual of these utilities with a dedicated locator on hand, that these are unassumed utilities. And so therefore they are still able to be located by the dedicated locator and be updated itself. And it's just better visual with a dedicated locator on hand. So this is really something we are seeing more and more interest from this sector of land developers and municipalities on this side. So we are expecting a little bit more conversation that's going around today. I'm seeing more of these submission coming through in the coming year. Also in the upcoming, we do have several more telecoms that's coming through. Another big one that we have that we are in current conversation are the Go expansion RER. Next one here are the active dedicated located service provider. It remained pretty much the same as from last year, but we are continuously having these conversation all across the industry of how, obviously opening up a little bit more resources for members or for project owners to have under a dedicated located service provider. So we are seeing several new locate service provider that are transitioning themselves under a dedicated locate service provider. So in this month, we've seen an update where Cable Wave has made its way again onto the dedicated locate service provider and are having their conversation for their project. And we also have Ontario Utility Locates, LF Locates are all interested parties that are now doing their preliminary conversation and just doing the research in terms of getting into a dedicated locate service provider. And obviously just providing all that resources all across the board. Now, by the numbers here for dedicated locator, we're seeing at this time of the off-peak just pretty much remain the same as what we were seeing from last year. But what I want to highlight here is that, from the beginning of the year, what we're seeing here are the reaps the benefits of under a dedicated locator. So what we are told and what we have seen around is that those project owners that have utilized dedicated locator towards the end of the year last year, or utilized and set up dedicated locator from last year with their project, continued on to the beginning of the year at a high amount of rate. So therefore, rather than being in an off-peak season, there are some great weathers that they were able to complete work, whereas they had locates on hand. So what we were told by most of these project owners is that the locates have been coming through all across the year, whereas work's coming through all across the year. So when we see January, February, March, all the way to June, we're seeing numbers increase at a progressive rate from the off-peak to the peak season. And from what we're seeing now is that we're actually seeing a transition that projects are scaling back a little bit earlier than projected to in previous years. What does that mean is what we're seeing and what we're told by project owners, that either they have completed most of their work at an earlier rate than expected, and also they have reaped through the pretty much what they're budgeted for the year. Therefore, they're scaling back on some of their project, but still continue on with several other concentrate areas that they look at. So that's where we're seeing the numbers from September, October, plateauing more so to what it looked like last year. Okay, here's just last month we did provide you a new update in terms of the heat map. And for those who have seen this into the ORCJ GCs that have come around to, we've shared several heat maps too, whereas locates are being called through across Ontario under a dedicated locator model. So this is just a brief video just to see the transition from what we've seen from the beginning of this year, and also more so transition from this time of the year last year to up to date right now. So just seeing that it's more so in the borrow there as we go through the year, we're seeing a lot of more outskirt projects outside the GTA kind of come through of the submission rates. So where we see the bluer green concentrated areas, there are locates or dedicated locate projects that are coming through in those townships where they were able to utilize dedicated locator, complete the locate, go in there, provide the installs, and move on to the next project. So hence where we're seeing the quite spread all across Ontario here. Okay, that's about my update here. At this time, I do have a guest speaker on hand here. It'll be Tabitha Wah from Rogers Communication. She's just going to give us a brief overview of the Rogers experience to dedicated locator. So through project control, cost savings, relation building, accountability, and customer satisfaction. So take it away, Tabitha. Just bear with me here. I think we're having a bit of technical difficulties. Tabitha, can you hear me? Okay, until we wait for Tabitha to come through, is there any other questions or any feedbacks you guys have on hand that you want to bring that up till we get this sorted? Okay, Jason, go ahead.
I was just curious on the fees that you have to pay for dedicated locator that go through to one call. I was just wondering if those could be explained as to what those fees pay for or what they're for.
Okay, so that's basically, as you know, Ontario One Call is non-for-profit, right? Previously, our fees are through the membership and also through the submission of the locates and such. Now with dedicated locator on hand, there is a cost recovery to that, so it does not go to the membership. So obviously we're not there. It's not a chargeback to the membership itself, but it's a separate division or project side of things. So that's where the fee itself goes to the project owner. So the project owner, it comes down to the people, the department development, the technology development. We are coming through to doing an update for a web portal specifically for DL. So that's part of the technology update to that. So all that fee kind of goes into the department itself and servicing the to what we provide to you now in these Q&As and such for dedicated locator. That answer your question there, Jason?
Yeah, it does. I kind of figured that. I just was wanting a confirmation. I just get asked from my above sometimes, so just looking for clarity. That's all.
Not a problem. Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Marco, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, finally. I do apologize for that. I don't know what happened. My microphone completely went out. Sorry. As you were saying.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Are you able to share your screen on your side?
I believe I can. Sorry, bear with me.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Technical difficulties, clearly. Please do let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Fantastic. Again, I do apologize for that. As Marco was saying, and I appreciate the introduction, my name is Tabitha Wah. I have been in the damage prevention industry for just over 20 years. I started at Ontario One Call, actually as a frontline agent, taking calls and doing faxes, which is quite the antiquated capacity. I currently have been with Rogers for just shy of 6 years, forgive me, as a damage prevention specialist. And as Marco was saying, from a dedicated locate and the Rogers experience, items we will be discussing is project control, the cost savings and budget control, the relationship building, accountability, as well as our customer connectivity and satisfaction. Any questions you do have, by all means, I can shout them out at the end and or put them in the chat or the Q&A section as I understand it. So from a project budget or cost control, this was more of an interactive capacity in the last one I've done, but question was, what is the longest you have had to wait to have a locate completed? Which of course does include not only getting one particular locate completed, but then waiting for potentially other LSPs or utilities to have theirs completed. Some expire, some didn't. When I was brought into Rogers in 2017, there had been 800 plus tickets for Rogers projects submitted through Ontario One Call. The average days to receive one completed locate was 54 calendar days. That said, the impact of that, of course, was limited visibility for project owners, LSPs, contractors. Other project impacts, of course, were, as mentioned, locates expiring, relocates, which costs members as well as excavators money, the ineffective use of LSP resources, again, the inability to meet our customer delivery dates, which we are committed to, thus rolling into a potential negative brand impact and loss of customer confidence on our behalf. Utilizing the DL model. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Tabitha. I'm just going to interrupt you there. I think we only still see the first slide. I'm not seeing it update in there yet.
This is seriously not going well.
Yeah, it's okay. Are you on slide 3 now, I believe?
That is a very good question, Marco. I was, yes.
Okay. You know what? I can probably share it on my end, and then you can just tell me which slide to go through. Okay. Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay. So I will start sharing my screen here for you, okay? Okay, are we in this right screen, Tabitha?
We can certainly reiterate this one. So yes, just adds to all of the other items that we discussed, the pre-dedicated model, approximately 54 days to get a full locate completed, as well as the project impacts, everything from locates expiring to loss of customer confidence from a Rogers standpoint. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Marco. As comparatively, now understanding it was 2017 to 2023, utilizing the dedicated locate model, we had just shy of 1,800 tickets submitted for Rogers projects, which was as of November 1st or mid-October, forgive me. And the average days to receive one completed locate on average, based on the number of tickets we have submitted, was 10 calendar days, plus 10 business days. That, of course, leading into the project impacts, which all of our locates are valid. Our excavator, being the project owner as well as contractors we have outlined, and our LSP are utilized effectively. They have specific conversations and a relationship between the two of them to outline timelines, what needs to be done, and maintain not only the locates, but the safe digging practices as well. There is a timeline and budget transparency for the project owner, for Rogers in particular, and the positive brand impact. And that said, with the DL model, we have projects completed on time, under budget, and the customer confidence retained and or restored. Now, project completed on time and under budget. Marco, if you would click. Mostly. That's it. And to the next slide, if you would, please. From an accountability standpoint, dedicated locator model has assisted Rogers a great deal with maintaining the accountability to not only our customers, but to our management and finance aspects, which of course are the major deal, to our vendors, our contractors, our LSPs, of course, to the regulators, be it the TSSA, the ESA, Ontario One Call, as well as you being other utility owners, things to that effect. Our accountability is also to you in the event we are doing locates on your behalf through a DL model. From a customer connectivity and satisfaction standpoint, COVID lessons. Everyone, of course, having had to work from home, maintaining all the broadband that we needed to, putting in locates that were through the public queue. We're getting done in a relatively timely fashion, but at the same time, of course, everything having been shut down and only the emergency services, it did become quite a customer concern at the time. And as we are the largest telecommunications provider via Homes Passed in Canada, it was certainly something that we needed to keep an eye on and ensure that our customers were being connected and could do everything that they needed to, be it from home, work, school, all other aspects. From a rural customer standpoint, our FTTH program are now receiving reliable and consistent connectivity, and we are ensuring that our rural customers are connected on a consistent basis, and if not, we will be in the very near future. From a Rogers satisfaction survey results, as I understand it, based on our customer survey results, it did increase upwards of 80% in the last survey that was outlined. And next slide, please. From a relationship building standpoint, again, from the Rogers experience, introducing not only new DLSPs or LSPs and creating that relationship, but also with current LSPs and or DLSPs that we may not necessarily have had a relationship with in the past. That said, between that particular aspect, as well as excavators and LSPs and DLSPs, not only maintaining their own relationship and ensuring locates are submitted in a timely manner and completed within a timely manner, as a utility owner and project owner as well, creating that relationship with different excavators as well as, again, LSPs and DLSPs. Relationships between other utility owners, operators, and excavators, again, maybe certain utilities and or project owners that we've never had an experience of a relationship or being involved with. So creating that relationship as well as what we would call horse trading to the extent between certain utilities. If we can get this one done, we can get this one done for you. Can we utilize this DLSP in order to look after your infrastructure? Is creating definite positive, positive relationships. And other project owners, the regulators, again with the TSSA, ESA, Ministry, Ontario One Call, ensuring that relationship is open, transparent, and that we are in full compliance with what we are required to do. Again, from a Rogers standpoint, our external customers, be it those who have Rogers service, number one priority, and we want to maintain that relationship as well as continue to make it better. And additionally, our own internal customers, be it management or everything from a frontline call center agent to the CFO. So definitely creating those relationships, and it has proven to be a very positive aspect. Excellent. And the results, that means, is a positive impact. And next slide, Mark. So as an example, as we were saying, from our FTTH or broadband aspects, the DL program for our rural customer connectivity, again, the heat map that was provided by Marco, and I thank you very much. This is part of the Simcoe County area. And the heat map is just areas where we are, in fact, or were installing our FTTH and utilizing the DL model to that extent. As you can see on the right-hand side from the locate request completion timeframe, 0 to 5 days. And I believe that is business days, and Mark, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. But certainly upwards or to the extent of almost 80%. That said, with the DL model, there are or have been certain aspects where there were utilities we were unaware of were in the area, so they didn't fall under the particular DL at the time, which has added to the 6 to 10 days and the progressive 11 and 16. However, from that standpoint, again, almost 80% done within the 0 to 5 business days. And next slide. That is about the extent of what I have from a Rogers communications experience. Any questions, comments, or observations on other project owners and or utilities? How have you found it? Would love to know.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tabitha, for that. So right now the floor is open. Just like I said, going back to Tabitha's slides here and also my slides here. First, I wanted to ask you there, Tabitha, on the previous slide that you had there about the 16 days or so in terms of the occurrence there. What are some of the external factors or internal factors based on those locates? Just kind of seeing how that stats work or how that relate to you and how that affected your project in terms of the timeline there with a dedicated locate service provider. What were some of the external factors of that?
Very good question, Marco. I would have to say it originated probably from the beginning aspects of when we were first getting into the DL model. Again, to that extent, some of our excavators, our contractors, were inputting a fair few more tickets than could potentially be maintained within the 5 to 10 business days for a DLSP to get completed. So there was that particular aspect. So, fed through to the 5 business days, and then, oh, well, the next piece we have to get done, but they've already been submitted. So having that conversation back and forth with not only our DLSP to say, you still do have to renegotiate the date within the 360 feedback, as well as with our own contractors, having the conversation in advance with the DLSP that's been chosen, stating this is how many kilometers per week we're anticipating, ensuring that that is agreed upon, whereas prior to that conversation didn't necessarily happen. But again has progressed to the extent where it does happen with every DLSP and excavator that we have. So some of those aspects, and again, as I said, there were certain utilities that we were not aware of that were in the area, or we had expanded the area and went through the public side as opposed to the DL model. But then, of course, we had our DLSP have conversations with them and obtain the MSAs and mapping and things to that effect. So those were the particular factors that I recall having been an impact to that extent.
Okay, great. No, thank you for that. At this point of time, the floor is open for everyone. And once again, these are an open feedback for all across. It may not be directly a question directly to us, maybe just something you want to share and experience-wise as a member. And I thank Tabitha for sharing their experience to Rogers, but on her side of things, or on Rogers' side of things, the clear cut and said there is the communication, and how that communication, I did cover this on my slides as well too, how that under the DL model, there is quite a beautiful amount of transparency all across the board, where we never really had that experience to it industry wide, where that promotes itself safe digging, that promotes itself, faster way to produce some of these projects on hand, as there's an open communication all across the board, and more awareness all across the board. As we work through industry-wide with dedicated locator, and obviously on our end, where we can service more of you through a more visibility as a member side of things through the web portal and other such resources that we can provide to you. These are all coming down to what we are looking to improvements and so that itself feedbacks in terms of the current process that you see right now. What are some of the upsides of things on your end? What are some of the downside of things on your end? What are the current struggles that you are going through in terms of having this transparency and having these conversation across the board between a DLSP as a member, as us as Ontario One Call? And just to let everyone know that if you're not able to unmute yourself or anything, there is a Q&A section on the top left-hand corner of this page. So you can also type in your questions in there if you have any in there, and our team will be glad to relay those information for you on this. Jason, you do have a question again?
I do. I was just curious. During your presentation at the start, or maybe it was midway, you had a active dedicated locator service provider list that's ongoing of current DL projects or DLSPs that are working on projects.
Mm-hmm.
Within, like, that's on your website. Is there like is there something like quick that you could flip to people that you'd be able to have contacts that we could be able to access who we need to talk to at any of those firms to get some pricing from them for doing DL? Or
yeah, definitely. So that's something that you can reach over to our team here. These are just active lists to what we have seen in terms of project-wise and have succeeded to the green light, meaning, they progress to servicing that project owner as a dedicated locator service provider. So that's what you see on the left-hand side here. What you're seeing on the right-hand side here are more so the LSPs that are in the progress right now. So these are the submissions that we see right now, and they're kind of just getting through the member approvals now. But definitely, if you want to get a sector list and what you will see who are currently active, we can provide you that as a team itself. And yeah, just reach over to our team. We can provide you some of the main contacts for these the DLSPs that are already on board. But once again, it doesn't limit to what is stated on the left-hand side there. On our webpage, there is a section there for dedicated locator service provider, whereas there's a framework stipulated in there that we work with a lot of the high-risk infrastructure owners that collectively put this together, this framework for a locator service provider to come through as servicing to become a dedicated locator service provider. So there is a basic framework to start that off, and then from that point, and obviously it's individual per member that are affected within that project scope for them to obtain additional training requirements and such that they require to proceed forward under that project. So just reach over to our team if you do want to get that information. We'd be glad to provide you what we have on hand.
Well, yeah, because last year I kind of just went cold call. Because I took that list, I kind of just went on, like, that was on your website. I started cold calling, and that was part of the other problem is it was logistics, right? Like where we are situated, where we're doing projects, a lot of those that were approved that were on that list, they're GTA way. They were nowhere really near us, so we basically
Yeah.
had to use kind of who was around us. So, anyways, I was just curious if there's something that was easy to flip to people or not, if you had that on hand, but.
Yep, no, definitely. We can reach that over to you. Just reach over to our team here. Tabitha, I think you have a question there.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Fantastic. Previously in your presentation, you had indicated that there, in an unassumed utility aspect, DLSPs can certainly go out there and locate the utilities. To that extent, I guess my question, which did come up in a previous conversation, is would that be a private locator that would be responsible for that? If not, and a DLSP can actually, go out there and locate those utilities, as it were, would they even be notified if they're unassumed utilities?
So that's a very good question there, and that's where we see a lot of the municipalities take advantage of that directly, or even the land developers, because it does a lot of this DLSP can provide both services at both hand there. So both becoming a dedicated local service provider and also seeing what's on hand there as both offering that and as a private locate, right? So it is somewhat record building at the same time too, for that such municipalities that they can go through and see these infrastructure as they come in through. So that's one way to utilize it, and that's where these conversations are steering towards too.
Thank you.
Yeah, Luca.
Just a quick couple questions. One about that list of DLSPs. So, has everyone on that list been approved as a DLSP already?
On the left-hand side that you saw there, they have been approved, meaning they are all active under a project. Let me go back to that slide again. And then the ones on the right-hand side where they're very close to, those are the ones that, like, once again, a project owner have submitted them as a proposed dedicated local service provider, or have selected them as a dedicated local service provider. So therefore, they're going through the progression or the steps towards the dedicated local submission process, whereas they're reaching over to each member, obtaining their mappings, requirements, and additional trainings and such.
Okay, so early on in these sessions, even prior to the law passing, I guess I was under the impression it was Ontario One Call that's going to authorize who can and cannot be a DLSP, but you're saying now a project can just select any company?
It's so that's where that's where I speak of. There's a framework set and standard for a dedicated local service provider. So, initially when this is submitted through, Ontario One Call doesn't take the position of the certification or approval of a DLSP. Based on the legislation itself, that still goes through under a membership to provide that approval for each selected for the selected DLSP. But what we do
But
there
we
is
can't say no, so how are we? There's no second option. We must accept all proposals.
Yes, so from what's going through in the beginning portion of that is that there's that framework. So they do have initial framework to work with to become a dedicated locator. Like I said, we're not opening the doors.
But who's verifying that? Who's verifying that
you're verifying that
can do?
You're verifying that as a member, but you have to have you have to agree to a dedicated locator. But in terms of approval to that selected DLSP, you may have an oppose or anything to that, where that is within that 10 business days, you would have to notify the project owner or Ontario One Call should you have any issues to that. But based on the legislation, your main requirement as a member, yes, you must agree on a dedicated locator. So that's where the stance is that you have to agree on a dedicated locator, whether or not that is a preferred dedicated locator that you choose over one. That approval goes to the member itself and to work with the project owner.
Okay, I would say that's a bit problematic, but I guess it just seems very uncontrolled. And what is there? I guess there's a potential for an unlimited list of DLSPs between now and the infinite future that you have to approve, and it falls on the member to verify that they're capable of performing locates.
And hence the reason why we are coming through with that framework, there is a high standard within that framework to progress under a dedicated locator, even in consideration of that. So project owners do look into this factors itself. The locate service provider are gone through to that point as well too, in terms of this framework and how it's put through.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is we're seeing request notices come in without any estimated end dates or projects that have no plans. So just maintenance projects for, water infrastructure as it breaks. So it's not even a project, it's just a maintenance cycle. And these are being approved as dedicated locator projects. But the expectation is for the member to keep updating the mapping for an area for DLSP for the length of the project, but there's no end date to the project. So in a busy area like Toronto or GTA, I'm not sure, what the expectation is here if there's no end date.
So with that being said, dedicated locator, it is a per calendar year. So we do a touch point to the project owner. As per the act, every 90 days we do a touch point with the project owner. And also it's a yearly basis, so we do provide a notice to all the affected members on a yearly basis of that project continuing on or any scope changes within that time. So we do provide that. And some of these submission we do request to put an end date on that. But what you're in question on hand there is that we are seeing some municipalities are actually utilizing the dedicated locator model for any type of work that they may have on hand for as a municipal. So whether or not it is a project work continuously with a water main rehab or water main repair, if that's the case, they're looking to utilizing this model itself. So hence the reason why you may see some of these submission towards not a direct work scope, but there's a generalized work scope within what they're looking for into utilizing dedicated locator. So with that being said, you're seeing more of a regional scope utilizing the dedicated locator, so more so as a citywide scope rather than a concentrated, single road scope to where they're requesting that to use the dedicated locator.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, to me, it's a bit, it falls on the member. It's a bit too loose, and even if we're approving mapping for a certain amount of time through, let's say, something like the multi-view application. If there's no end date, then how do I know when to restrict mapping to that company? Or, if there's no project scope, how do I know something
and this is where
built in the area,
And this is where it's described to, what we're trying to establish here is that open transparency all across the board, right? So as a member here, I do understand it, and your concerns are very valid. But that doesn't limit you to receiving a request and just providing them mapping. That your limit doesn't stop from there. Is that you do create this open communication between that project owner, just like Tabitha's presentation here, is that there's that new built interaction between a project owner as a member and as a DLSP to have this relationship on hand. So when you have these concerns or you're progressing with these projects, you can first go on to them directly and have these conversations, how you want to utilize or how you want to share this mapping to them. It is not black and white through Ontario One Call Hand or through the legislation itself. It is made in there, whereas there's that flexibility and transparency between a project owner and a member can work hand in hand to ensure that it is utilized to the best capability and safe taking all the way across the board. That is our common end goal to dedicate locator and this model itself, as everyone part of this, as you as a member, as dedicated locate service provider, and as project owners, everyone has the same end goal, right? It's deliver project on hand, to have locates on hand and safe dig in practice. So we're all positioning ourselves to that itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worry. Okay, anyone else? Okay, great. So we'll end this off, I'll give you guys but 9 minutes earlier for the week itself. So with our next Q&A, we're uncertain. We're looking into December, but I know December time a lot are either taking vacation earlier and such. So we'll provide an update to when our timeline is for the next Q&A session for December. But definitely, just like I described onto our slide here, is that in 2024, beginning of 2024, we can gather back again here to discuss any changes that we have set forward for our process to streamline, everyone's feedback. We are hearing back from a lot of membership itself as well too, in terms of feedbacks to it this process. So we are hearing them out, and we are working our ways to ensure that it works out all across the board. So you have our email address there, deal@ontarioonecall.ca. Reach over to us if you have any other concerns or anything like that that you don't feel comfortable sharing on this group. Reach over to us. We can have those conversations and go from there and ensure that your concerns are taken. Aside from that, have a good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tabitha, for your presentation today.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Marco. Bye, everyone.